Hey guys, tonight we're going way, way back before pyramids, before written words, even before the invention of socks. You're waking up in a Stone Age cave, nestled between your damp, woolly blanket and someone's stray elbow. Smoke from last night's fire hangs thick in the air, your head's pounding slightly. And outside, there's a mammoth just standing there, fogging up the entrance with its heavy breathing. This is prehistory's version of a Monday morning, and honestly, you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know where you're watching from, and what time. It is always lovely to know which part of the world is snoozing with me. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The fire has gone out again. You're curled up on a bed of dry grass and chewed furs, and someone's foot is firmly wedged under your ribcage. You don't move right away. It's cold. Not the crisp, bracing kind of cold, more the sort that settles in your bones and hums there unpleasantly. Outside, you hear the rustle of leaves, the click of pebbles. Could be the wind, could be a lynx. You're not in the mood to find out which. Eventually, you sit up, spine crackling like a bundle of twigs, and take stock. The children are still asleep, bundled in a pile that resembles a slightly aggressive laundry basket. One of them is drooling into a discarded fish skin. You try not to think too hard about it. Someone's already up. Probably Mara, the one who insists on greeting the sun each morning, despite the fact that it's usually too cloudy to see anything but mud. You mutter a grunt, today's equivalent of morning, and shuffle toward the dying embers of the hearth. Your breakfast options are limited. There's a leftover tuber, roughly the size and texture of a stone, and a bit of something that might once have been meat. You sniff it. Best not. You chew on the tuber. It tastes like regret. The cave smells of damp rock smoke, and whatever that thing is, Kirk insists on wearing as a cloak. It might have once been a hyena. You swaddle yourself in a slightly less pungent pelt and step outside. The morning hits you with a blast of wind and a truly unreasonable number of birds. High above the sun, peers over the hills, like it's also not thrilled to be here. You stretch because your back has already filed a complaint and glance around. Life in a hunter-gatherer band means waking up to the same 20 people every day, all of whom have seen you cry while trying to light wet kindling. It's not glamorous, but there's a rhythm to it. Historians still argue whether early humans organized their mornings with any structure at all, or simply bumbled around until someone started sharpening flint. Based on your current state, bumbling feels accurate. You check the basket of foraged greens someone brought in yesterday. Mostly edible, slightly wilted one with teeth marks. Possibly human. Possibly squirrel. You make a mental note not to eat that one. Your stomach groans, as if remembering meals from a better time. Like last week, when someone miraculously caught a fish that wasn't already half-eaten. For now, you sip some water from a skin pouch and try to ignore the crunch of something unexpected. As your eyes adjust, you notice the familiar layout of the camp. Fire pit in the middle, bone pile off to the side, Mara's collection of worry stones arranged in a circle like they might start humming any minute. She insists they talk to her. You're not convinced, but you've seen her find mushrooms in places no one else even looked. You wander toward the edge of the clearing. There's a stone outcropping you like to sit on just high enough to watch the tree line without committing to full participation in the morning chaos. You settle there now, hugging your knees, watching as the rest of the group stirs. It's a peaceful moment, a rare one. You savor it, and then someone screams, not in a panicked, dire way, more in a one of the kids stepped on a hedgehog again kind of way. Sure enough, it's little Tev, hopping around on one foot, shrieking like the world is ending, while holding a very spiky woodland creature. You sigh, stand up, and shuffle down the slope to assist. You extract the hedgehog with the resigned finesse of someone who's done this before, soothe Tev with a bit of honey sap, and issue the day's first serious warning. If you pick up another spiky animal, it goes in the stew. Tev grins. You don't think he believes you. You're not sure you believe yourself. By now, most of the adults are awake. Someone's gnawing on a dried cricket. Someone else is aggressively sharpening a spear, like it personally offended them. The children are arguing over who gets to wear the good fur today, which honestly smells about the same as the bad one, just with fewer visible fleas. You glance up at the grey-blue sky clouds, moving fast breeze picking up. It's probably going to rain. Again. You start mentally cataloging what needs to happen before that firewood foraging, convincing someone else to scrape hides. Somewhere in the woods a bird calls out, with a noise that sounds suspiciously like laughter. You chew the last gritty bite of tuber, trying not to think too much about the texture somewhere between bark and disappointment. There's no salt, of course. You trade half your woven hair charms for a pinch of salt, maybe more if it came with something vaguely resembling bread. But here in the Stone Age breakfast is more of a moral exercise than a meal. You stand and stretch again, your joints clicking like two rocks being rubbed together, which ironically is the technology level you're working with. Your stomach still feels a bit like it's staging a quiet protest. So you do what every good prehistoric mom does. You look around and try to find something edible that won't either kill you or run away. Your first stop is the root pile. It's less a pile and more a scattering of withered lumps that someone optimistically dug up yesterday. You pick through it with the same care you'd give a clearance rack at a charity shop, sifting through the moldy bits, slightly fermented surprises, and one that smells faintly of ammonia. You take the least offensive-looking one knock off the dirt and give it a tentative nibble. The crunch is enthusiastic. The flavor is, well, it exists. Maybe. Somewhere. Historians still argue whether early humans had the sense of taste we do today, or if survival dulled the palate into simply recognizing not poison. Judging by the current menu, not poison is about the best you can hope for. You spot Kirk wandering back from the riverbank with an expression that suggests he's either seen something magical or stepped in something awful. He holds up a handful of what might be edible mushrooms or might be extremely exciting mushrooms. You make a mental note to keep them out of reach of the children who've been known to eat pretty much anything once, including the decorative charcoal from the fire pit. Your eldest stirs from the fur pile, yawns wide, and immediately asks, "What's for breakfast?" You hand over a particularly chewy bit of root and smile the way all tired mothers do when serving culinary disappointment with a side of pretend enthusiasm. Meanwhile, you turn your attention to the baskets. These were woven last season from river reeds and hope. They're meant for carrying food, but more often than not, they contain curious rocks, half-eaten acorns, and whatever Dev thought looked shiny yesterday. You rifle through and find a handful of dried berries, mostly intact. Score. You tuck them into your pouch and debate saving them for later or hoarding them as emergency toddler bribes. As you chew on another root, this one slightly less terrible, you watch the rest of the band waking properly now. Someone's trying to coax a fire back to life with a breathy chant and a look of intense hope. Someone else is whittling a stick into possibly another stick. You're not sure. It's early. A few of the other women are crouched near the edge of the clearing, poking through the underbrush. Foraging is a social activity here. You wander over children trailing behind you like sticky, semi-feral ducklings. You crouch low beside Mara, who hands you something leafy and mutters, "Tastes like swamp, but fills the belly." You nod and add it to your pouch. One of the younger women points out a patch of snaggly-looking roots near a tree stump. You all eye it. It might be edible. It might be haunted. In any case, someone grabs a digging stick and starts prying it loose. This is the rhythm of your life. Dig, sniff, nibble, repeat. Occasionally there are bonuses, like when you stumble upon a bush still clinging to a few last berries hidden beneath a drooping canopy. The others let out a collective murmur, somewhere between reverence and low-key glee. You rush forward, toddlers squealing behind you, and pick as fast as you can before the birds catch on. One berry goes into your pouch. Two go straight into your mouth. It's a quiet joy tart and juicy bursting like tiny stars on your tongue. You close your eyes for a second, letting the taste linger. It's a luxury. Behind you, one of the kids trips over a root and faceplants into a patch of mud. You sigh, hoist them upright, wipe their nose with a frayed bit of hide, and pretend you didn't just lose 3 berries in the commotion. As the sun climbs slightly higher, though it's still barely visible behind the haze, you continue combing the landscape for anything that might help keep everyone upright. Another day. You find a beetle nest. This causes debate. Some of the group think it's good protein. Others think it's revolting. You think it's an excellent way to distract the children. You hand one particularly fat beetle to Tev, who shrieks with delight and immediately attempts to name it. A brief moment of peace. You cherish it. Historians still argue whether bugs were a staple or a fallback food in most early diets. You personally don't care, so long as they keep the children quiet and occasionally taste like something. You continue down a slope toward a damp patch of ground that sometimes grows mushrooms. The smell is rich and earthy, with just a hint of decay like a forest's armpit. You poke around carefully. One wrong mushroom, and the evening turns into a very exciting funeral. You find a few familiar caps, dull gray, slightly rubbery, and reliably unpoisonous. Your pouch is getting heavier now. Not exactly full, but promising. You straighten up and look back toward the clearing. From here, you can just see smoke starting to rise. Someone finally got the fire going. Children's laughter echoes faintly, followed by a more concerning crash. You start heading back at a brisker pace, pouch swinging at your side, your feet crunching softly through the leaf litter. And then you hear it, a low growl, not close, not even terribly loud, but enough to make your scalp tighten. You freeze. The forest hushes. After a few heartbeats, it passes. Maybe it was your imagination. Maybe it was Steve the cave bear again. You make a mental note to walk in groups for the rest of the day and to finally do something about the lack of bear deterrent technology in the neighborhood. You trudge back toward the cave beetle bits, and all quietly thankful that breakfast didn't involve any outright disasters today. The walk back to the cave isn't long, but with 3 children, a sloshing pouch of forage, and at least 2 mild bug bites already, it somehow feels like you're crossing continents. One child clings to your leg, another is loudly humming a song with only one note. The third is running in zigzags, chasing something invisible, and definitely not listening to your repeated grunts of stay close or you'll be hawk bait. You step over a branch. The toddler doesn't. There's a squawk, a small faceplant, and then the very specific wail that only emerges when someone's landed in fox dung. Again, you wipe off what you can with a handful of dry grass and try not to think about how many more hours remain in the day. Inside the camp, things are slightly better. Someone's managed to make tea, or at least a steaming pot of hot leaf water that smells vaguely of mint and burnt hair. You sip from a shared shell and pretend it's soothing. Raising children in the Stone Age is a full contact sport. Your day is a constant dance of food hunting, nose wiping, and basic survival, usually with someone climbing you like a tree while you're trying to do all three. Most of the time, you're just hoping no one walks directly into the fire again. You sit on a low stone near the hearth and attempt to sort through your pouch. A tiny hand reaches in immediately and grabs the mushrooms. No, those are for later, you say, in your best, firm but gentle tone, which in prehistoric dialect sounds suspiciously like a sigh followed by an eye roll. The child pouts, then starts chewing on your braid instead. You let it happen. It's keeping them quiet. Historians still argue whether prehistoric families operated in tight nuclear units or larger shared parenting systems. Based on your experience, it's mostly whoever's closest deals with the problem. Your youngest is currently being wrestled into a fur wrap by an older cousin with the patience of a saint and the upper body strength of a goat. You send her a grateful grunt. Meanwhile, the children begin what you call the morning circuit, an energetic combination of running, shouting, chasing insects, and finding new ways to hurt themselves on objects that have been in the same place since the Ice Age began. Someone's foot finds the sharp edge of a flint chip. There's blood. Not much, but enough to require a ceremonial wail and a dramatic lie-down. You rinse the cut with water slap on a poultice, made from something Mara insists has cooling energies, and call it a day in terms of parenting victories. The injured child is now limping theatrically and demanding to be carried. You oblige for about 10 steps before negotiating a piggyback deal with another small human using the last berry from your pouch as currency. You shuffle to the edge of the clearing and sit with a thump on the dusty ground. Across from you, an older woman is plucking lice from her granddaughter's hair while humming a tune that might be ancient or just invented that morning. You watch her fingers move deftly, and for a moment, you feel something soft settle in your chest, something like belonging. Then one of your kids shouts, "Look what I found," and holds up something that might be a human toe bone. You quickly confiscate it. Welcome to motherhood circa 10,000 BCE. A group of the older boys start a game involving sticks, shouting, and a large rock. It's unclear what the rules are, if there are any, but the enthusiasm is undeniable. You silently pray that no one loses a tooth today. Last time, it took 2 weeks and 3 rituals to soothe the household spirits. One of the small children begins climbing a tree. Slowly, sideways. You're both impressed and deeply concerned. You start towards him, but before you can reach, there's a triumphant yell, a wobble, and then a soft thud into a bush. No injuries. This time, there's a popular theory among scholars that Stone Age children had a great deal of freedom to roam, learn, and develop resilience. That tracks, especially the resilience part. One of yours just pulled a live beetle out of their nose and kept chewing the mushroom from earlier as if nothing happened. Your fellow mothers share a look with you, the kind of look that says, if one more child sticks something up their nose today, I'm moving to the next valley. You step away for a moment, standing just past the clearing under a tree that drops its needles in delicate showers. For a second, there's quiet, the kind that sinks into your shoulders and lets your thoughts settle just a little. Then, as if summoned by peace itself, your middle child runs up and says urgently, "Mum, I swallowed something." You crouch down. What was it? A long pause, maybe a rock, maybe. You sigh. The rock swallowing phase is not your favorite. You check for breathing. All good. You mentally prepare for an interesting bowel movement later, and yet despite everything, every bizarre emergency, every grubby child, every terrifyingly large bird incident, you find yourself smiling as you gather them close again. It's not always obvious, but these tiny humans are your world. Even when they smell like damp fur and regret, you scoop up the smallest one, hoisting them onto your hip as you wander back towards the hearth. They press a sticky hand against your cheek and whisper, "You're warm." You hum in response, your breath rising with the smoke, your heart heavy with exhaustion, but full all the same. One more morning survived. You don't really plan to leave camp today. It's chilly, and your knee has been making that odd popping noise again. But someone mentions that the hazelnuts near the riverbank might still be in season. And before you know it, you've agreed to go foraging. Again. With children. Again. You sling your gathering pouch over one shoulder, do a quick count of your offspring, and then do it again, because one of them keeps hiding in the woodpile. Eventually, with 3 slightly mismatched furs, 2 semi-cooperative toddlers, and 1 digging stick, you're ready to venture out. The forest isn't far, but it feels like a journey every time. The undergrowth tugs at your feet, the trees whisper, and the children immediately start arguing about whose turn it is to carry the pouch, despite neither of them being strong enough to lift it when full. You head eastward toward the cluster of hazel trees by the stream. The air is crisp, and each breath feels like it's sweeping your lungs with pine needles. You pass the same broken log where last month you startled a fox into leaping directly onto Mara's face. She's still not over it. You are, however, still laughing about it. Along the way, you keep a watchful eye out for less amusing encounters. You've never actually seen Steve the cave bear, but the claw marks on the old elm trunk and the suspiciously flattened bushes suggest he exists and has opinions. The children rush ahead, then back again, then off in an entirely different direction. You call them softly, not wanting to shout. Loud noises, as you well know, are how you attract things with teeth. Eventually, they return proudly, displaying a collection of interesting sticks and one very upset beetle. Historians still argue whether Stone Age foragers traveled in tight family units or broader community groups. You're part of a loose coalition of whoever isn't busy elsewhere. Today it's you, your kids, and Rena, the woman who talks to mushrooms and claims trees send her dreams. She catches up, nodding at the sky. Storm tonight, she says, voice like sand. You squint upward, looks clear. But you've learned to trust Drenna. She's been oddly correct before, like the time she predicted a lizard swarm, and the next day your hut was filled with 15 of the blighters. You reach the hazel grove just as the children find the mud. It's glorious mud, rich, squishy, and immediately irresistible. They dive in with the glee of creatures who know they won't be doing the laundry. You let them wallow for a few minutes while you scan the underbrush for the real prize nuts. Most of them are gone, picked clean by birds, squirrels, and that suspicious-looking raccoon who's been loitering lately. But you find a few hiding beneath damp leaves, smooth and round, promising calories, and just a hint of luxury. You settle into the rhythm of gathering. One eye on the trees, one on the children, and one on the ground. Yes, that's 3. You're a mother. You've evolved extra senses. The youngest wanders up and offers you a slug. You smile politely and decline. They eat it anyway. You try not to react. You spot something odd, a patch of ground where the leaves are disturbed, the earth a little too smooth. Animal path, maybe. Or something was digging here. Drenna steps beside you and mutters, "Fox," or something pretending to be. Which is exactly the kind of phrase she loves to drop without follow-up. You move on, hazelnuts rattling in your pouch. The weight is reassuring. Suddenly a noise low and close. Not the growl of a predator, but the unmistakable hiss of a snake. You freeze. The children freeze. Even Drenna stops mid-riddle. There it is, curled beneath a fern golden brown, and watching you like you owe it money. You slowly back away, herding the kids behind you. No sudden moves, no noise. The snake flicks its tongue, considers you, then slithers away with a casual air of someone deeply unimpressed, your heart still pounding. The children, of course, want to chase it. You insist they do not. You decide that's enough foraging for one morning. As you walk back, you tell them stories to keep them close. Like the one about the squirrel who stole a fire ember and created summer. Or the woman who married a tree and gave birth to a grove. They listen wide-eyed, still muddy, still full of questions. "Can we eat fire?" one asks. You say no. You're not entirely sure that's true, but best not to test it today. The clearing appears ahead, smoke curling upward in lazy spirals. You smell roasting roots and someone's attempt at fish again. It's a comforting scent once you ignore the occasional whiff of singed fur. You unload your pouch near the fire. A few older women nod in approval. One even claps, which is basically a standing ovation in this community. The children immediately begin reenacting the snake encounter. Only now, the snake is apparently 40 feet long and breathes wind. You glance at the sky. Drenna's right. The clouds are thickening and the air has shifted. You can smell the metallic edge of rain. You wash your hands in the basin, a flat stone, with a hollow, worn smooth, over years of use, and scrape the worst of the mud from the children. One of them has acquired a rock so round and smooth, it might be sacred, or it might be a potato. You don't have the heart to take it away. You sit back against the cave wall, children clustered around you, the hum of the camp all around. A child you barely know climbs into your lap, sighs once, and falls asleep. You stroke their hair, eyes drifting shut for just a moment. The day's not over. There will be food to prepare fires to stoke probably another minor crisis involving sharp stones. But for now, in this brief lull, you breathe. You're not sure when rabbit skins became fashion, but here, you are squinting in the fading light, trying to stitch two of them together, using a bone needle that refuses to cooperate and sinew that smells faintly of despair. The youngest child is curled beside you, diligently chewing on your hair, as if that somehow helps. You let them. Frankly, it's easier than fighting it. The pelt you're working with is patchy. One corner is stiff with something you hope is old blood, and the whole thing is about as soft as a bark mat. Still in the Stone Age, a garment that covers most vital bits and only smells moderately of mildew counts as high fashion. You stab the needle through the edge, pull it taut, and wonder, not for the first time, why every piece of clothing requires this much effort. There's no run to the shop option here. If you want something to wear, you either skin it yourself, trade for it, or find a very friendly bird, and a lot of patience. Historians still argue whether clothing was more about status utility or magical protection. Based on how many carved beads your neighbor sewed into an ankle wrap, you're leaning toward all of the above, plus a bit of superstition. Trenna wanders by, wearing a frankly alarming ensemble made entirely of woven reeds, and something she claims is wolf whiskers. You nod politely and compliment her fringe. She smiles like someone who definitely didn't make it up as she went along. The children are playing a game nearby. It involves rocks, yelling, and a lot of rolling around. Every so often, one of them trips over the hide you're working on. You grunt. They grunt back. This is the Stone Age version of customer service. Your partner wanders in from the hunting trail, looking mildly winded and holding what appears to be a large bird. You squint. It's a goose with an expression of deep offense, even in death. He drops it beside you with a grunt that translates roughly to, "Not a mammoth, but it'll do." You nod. He sits. The baby latches onto his knee like a limpet. No one speaks for a while. It's a quiet moment, just first-stitching fire, crackling, and the occasional child shriek when someone finds a beetle in their shoe. You shift your focus to repairs. One of the older children tore a hole in their leggings yesterday while attempting to climb a tree that was clearly not climbable. The leggings made from 2-year-old deerskin and dreams are fraying at every edge. You patch the hole using a scrap from an old squirrel cape. Stylish. Not really. But it holds together. And that's the point. A small child stumbles over proudly, dragging a rabbit carcass that's clearly been dead longer than you'd like. They offer it to you with a grin. You accept it with a practiced smile and place it respectfully in the maybe use later pile, also known as the far side of the fire pit. Another mother is busy crafting footwear strips of hide bound into vaguely foot-shaped pouches, stuffed with moss for warmth. You remember your first attempt. It fell apart halfway through a hunt, and you spent the rest of the day with frozen toes and a squirrel laughing at you. These days you're better. Not perfect, but better. You finish your seam and hold the garment up. Its lopsided smells odd and has a suspicious stain that might be mushroom ink, but it's done. You'll wear it proudly, possibly with a belt made from braided horsehair if you're feeling fancy. Your partner eyes the tunic and raises a brow. It has shape, he offers diplomatically. You bop him lightly with it, and he laughs. The children immediately ask for their own whacking furs. You say no. They start trying to make one from bark. Meanwhile, the fire's starting to fade. You stoke it with a few dry twigs, careful not to use the special wood your neighbor insists brings dreams of ancestors. You already dream about docking frogs. You don't need help. As the light dims, the cave fills with the rustling of furs, the quiet murmur of voices, and the occasional thump of someone sitting too hard on a stone stool. You watch a group nearby as they tie feathers into their hair, part ritual, part aesthetic, and possibly an attempt to outweird each other. You take a moment to groom yourself, finger combing your hair and pulling out 3 bits of twig, a small pebble, and what might be an old bug. You smooth your new tunic over your lap and feel just briefly like maybe you have a handle on this whole survival thing. Historians sometimes debate whether early humans felt pride in their appearance or simply did what was necessary. But looking around, you see painted faces, braided hair, decorative scars, and jewelry made from teeth and shells. You don't know what they'd call it, but to you, it's unmistakable fashion. The kids begin to settle. One is wrapped like a burrito in bear hide, mumbling a song that's mostly about mud. Another is curled in a nest of reeds and feathers, already drooling on a stick they claimed as their sleep stick. You lay your tunic aside, drape a fur across your shoulders, and lean back on the cool stone. Outside, the night is humming trees, rustling insects, buzzing the distant call of something large and hopefully uninterested in you. You've made it through another day of Stone Age tailoring, toddler wrangling, and fashion crises. You didn't scream once? Well, not loudly. Bathing in theory should be a relaxing affair. A gentle rinse, a bit of scrubbing, perhaps a nice mineral soak. But in the Stone Age, bathing is more accurately described as surviving a cold water ambush while being stared at by woodland creatures. You wake early, body aching from last night's contorted sleeping position. Someone was using your arm as a pillow again, and decide against your better judgment that today's the day for a proper wash. You gather your things, a scrap of rough cloth, some ash for scrubbing, and a chunk of dried moss you've optimistically been calling soap. You bundle it all into a leather pouch and head toward the river, dodging muddy footprints and the occasional half-eaten berry along the way. The air is brisk, not refreshing, brisk more like will probably take your breath and your will to live brisk. Your breath clouds in front of you as you step through dew-slick grass, the sun still dragging itself above the horizon like it had a rough night. As you approach the water's edge, a goat, wild or semi-domesticated, it's hard to say, ambles into your path. It sniffs your pouch, then looks at you like it knows what you're about to do and finds it laughable. You shoo it away, set your pouch down, and begin the delicate process of disrobing. It's not that you're modest after 3 children. Modesty is something you traded for extra firewood years ago. But the cold makes every inch of exposed skin a small betrayal. You step into the river. You immediately regret it. The water hits you like 1,000 tiny daggers, sharp and immediate. You gasp, flail slightly, and then freeze because movement just seems to make it worse. You try to focus on the task, clean skin, less stink, maybe fewer lice. You dunk your head, scrub behind your ears, and use the moss on your arms in fast shivering circles. Historians still argue whether Stone Age people bathed for hygiene ritual or just to feel marginally less like a swamp beast. You're doing it mostly because someone politely suggested you smelled like a tired boar. You manage a quick rinse and stumble back out, goose flesh rippling across your arms. The goat has returned and is now licking your discarded tunic. You swat it away, then slap the cloth against a rock to dislodge the worst of the dirt. It helps marginally. Wrapped in a fur that smells faintly of damp squirrel, you begin the walk back to camp, dripping and internally debating whether cleanliness is worth the trauma. A child spots you halfway and yells, "Mum's naked again," which summons half the camp in about 6 seconds. You cover up quickly, grumbling, and make a mental note to never bathe within 100 meters of a child again. Back at camp, your partner grins and says, "You smell less like a mammoth's armpit," which in this era is essentially poetry. You respond by flinging your damp tunic at him. It lands with a satisfying splat. You sit near the fire to dry, combing your fingers through your wet hair. One of the older women hands you a comb carved from bone. It's beautiful, delicate, and only mildly infested with someone else's hair. You thank her and start pulling it gently through the tangles. Nearby, a small group is preparing oils, more accurately, animal fat mixed with herbs. It's smeared on dry skin, used in ceremonies, and occasionally doubles as perfume. Someone offers you a dab. It smells like pine and hope. You smear it on your elbows and feel halfway civilized. A child wanders over with a collection of river stones and proceeds to line them up in front of you, explaining each one's magical name. You nod solemnly as they introduce Gary Doomy and Princess Slime. You assign them as honorary bathing guardians and stack them into a wobbly tower beside the fire. Someone across the camp is attempting to wash their hair using ash water. The results are not inspiring. You silently wish them luck and pretend you didn't see the chunk of lichen stuck to their fringe. Your skin begins to dry, tightening slightly under the warmth of the fire. You feel cleaner, yes, but also slightly scorched, and still vaguely annoyed about the goat incident. Still, there's a satisfaction in knowing you won't be the smelliest adult today. Possibly not even in the bottom 3. One of your kids leans in, sniffs you, and says approvingly, "You don't smell like bugs anymore." You ruffle their hair and mutter something resembling gratitude. The rest of the day, looms meals to prepare furs to repair, at least one ritual involving feathers and humming. But for now, you sit in the comfort of dry skin and semi-clean hair, breathing in the mingled aromas of pine fat balm, roasted roots, and just the faintest whiff of goat. Dinner time in the Stone Age is never predictable. Sometimes it's a glorious sizzling hunk of roasted meat that fills the whole clearing with mouth-watering smoke. Other times, it's boiled leaves, and a sigh of hope this doesn't make us hallucinate. Tonight, you're hoping for something in between. You've spent the better part of the afternoon scraping a root that smells like onions and tastes like damp earth. Now, as the sun dips lazily toward the trees, you glance toward the hunting trail. Still no sign of the food bringers. You can't help but eye your pouch of gathered nuts with growing suspicion. It might have to be Plan B. Dinner depends, as it often does, on whether your partner remembered which end of the spear to throw. There's a rustle in the bushes. You squint. A figure emerges, limping slightly, covered in mud, holding something. You walk over. He lifts his prize, a deer leg. Just the leg. No body, no explanation, just the leg. It's not bleeding, which is somehow more unsettling. You open your mouth to ask, but he just says, "The rest ran off." You stare at the leg. The leg stares back. You both agree, without speaking, to cook it and not overthink the logistics. The fire's going strong. Someone's singing softly an old melody about hunting spirits and sharp stones. You arrange the meat on a spit, securing it with twine made from gut. The smell as it begins to cook is glorious. Smoky, rich, almost enough to forget the goat incident from earlier. The children gather round like moths to flame eyes, wide mouths, already working. You hand out chunks of roasted root to stall them. One chews with visible suspicion and asks, "Is this the same kind we used in the mud wall?" You ignore the question. Historians still argue whether meat was a rare treat or a regular fixture in Stone Age diets. Based on tonight's enthusiasm, you'd guess it's somewhere in between an irregular miracle made possible by sheer luck and occasional leg theft. Drenna joins you at the fire, holding a bundle of herbs and a skull she insists wards off indigestion. You wave her over. She tosses the herbs into the flames, where they hiss and release a sharp, minty smoke. It smells faintly like burnt socks, but you nod appreciatively. The meat is browning nicely now, juices dripping onto the hot stones below. You rotate it slowly, watching fat bubble and crackle. The smell draws more of the group to the fire. There's a low murmur of anticipation. You call over the children distributing chunks of meat root and the last of the berries. The smallest one immediately tries to stick their food into the fire to make it crispier. You intervene just in time. Everyone sits in a rough circle, food in hand, heads bent low. It's one of the few truly communal moments of the day. The children are quiet mostly. The older ones are already trading food, trying to offload their least favorite roots for extra meat. You take a bite. It's chewy, gamey, and deeply satisfying. A little tough in places, and there's a hint of dirt that suggests someone dropped it. But you're not complaining. As you eat, you glance around the firelight. Faces glow orange in the flickering light shadows dancing along the cave walls. You hear someone tell a story about a fish the size of a canoe. It might be true. It might be wishful thinking. Either way, it earns a few wide-eyed gasps and one enthusiastic, "Can we eat that next time?" You lean back against a rock full for the first time in days. A rare treat. A small hand slips into yours, sticky and warm. The child mumbles something about wanting to sleep in the clean spot tonight. You nod. There's no such thing, but it's a nice idea. Your partner starts talking about the hunt, how he slipped, how the deer kicked him, how the leg came off, and how miraculously no one got mauled. It's a rambling tale full of dramatic gestures and slightly embellished heroics. You laugh. The kids are enraptured. You think he's about 40% truthful? That's good enough. One of the teenagers tosses a bone into the darkness and declares it an offering to the bone spirits. Another says the bone spirits only accept polished femurs. An argument ensues. You sip some warm water from a bark cup and let it happen. The fire pops loudly. Sparks rise and drift into the sky like tiny orange stars. You sit quietly watching them fade. Someone burps. A long, proud post-meal burp. The camp erupts in laughter. Even Drenna's skull seems to approve. You look at the people around you, muddy tired, wrapped in mismatched furs, and feel a wash of something rare and soft. You're not thriving. You're not particularly clean. But for tonight, you're fed warm and surrounded by the people who make all the chaos worth it. Even if one of them is currently licking their stone cup, you think maybe tomorrow you'll try your hand at cooking again. Or not. You might just nap. Either way, you'll get through it. One roasted root and stolen deer leg at a time. The fire is dying down, now reduced to a ring of glowing coals and the occasional pop of stubborn sap. The meat's long gone, picked, clean-chewed, traded, and in one case, buried by a child who swears it's for later. You stretch your legs and wonder as you often do at this hour, how early humans ever came up with the idea of rubbing two sticks together to make fire. Desperation, probably. Or a very long evening with nothing else to do. You reach for the tinder basket, bark shavings, dry moss, a handful of feathers, someone plucked from an uncooperative pheasant, and begin assembling the evening's blaze. It's your turn to get the fire going again. The kids are all pretending to sleep. You suspect most of them are still very much awake, judging by the occasional muffled giggle and the faint sound of chewing. You hold the fire sticks in your hands and begin the eternal process. One stick in a groove, the other spinning between your palms, fast and harder than your wrists are ready for. Your shoulders ache almost immediately. Sweat beads along your forehead. Nothing. You try again. Still nothing. You mutter under your breath and shoot a look at the heavens, as if someone up there might feel guilty enough to help. A small spark leaps, then dies. You grit your teeth, channel your inner fury, and spin the stick with the determination of someone who desperately doesn't want another cold night. Finally, a thin thread of smoke, a fragile curl barely visible. You coax it gently, adding moss, then feather fluff. It catches, slowly, hesitantly, like a toddler being asked to share. You blow carefully. The ember glows, flame. It flares up small but proud, and you add kindling in layers. Twigs, bark, then a few thick sticks placed just so. The fire responds with a satisfying crack, as if it knows how close you were to swearing in front of the ancestors. Historians still argue whether fire was first tamed for cooking protection or social bonding. For you tonight, it's warmth, it's comfort, and it's a welcome distraction from the sharp, unforgiving cold creeping in under your furs. You sit back and admire your work. The flames flicker high now, casting long shadows and warming your toes. A few others shuffle closer, furs wrapped tight, eyes glazed with sleep and smoke. One offers you a dried root chunk. You pretend to enjoy it. Someone nearby is sharpening a tool. The sound, stone against stone, is rhythmic, almost meditative. A soft scraping that blends with the rustle of wind and the sleepy muttering of children. You take this moment to examine your hands. Dry, scratched, calloused, strong. You've made fires with them, pulled roots from frozen ground, held newborns, braided hair, struck stone into tools, slapped mosquitoes. They've done everything except rest. You dip your fingers into a pouch of fat and smear a bit onto your knuckles. It smells faintly of mint and meat. Your skin sighs in relief. Someone nearby is telling a story, something about a cave that sings and a bird that lays fire. The details are hazy, dreamlike. You catch fragments. The cave never sleeps. The bird burns your lies away. Only the barefoot may enter. The kids love this sort of thing. You do too, though you pretend not to. One of yours scoots closer, curls against your side, and whispers, "Do you think the bird would like us?" You whisper back, "Only if we feed it beetles." This gets a sleepy chuckle and an exaggerated shudder. They hate beetles. You make a note to keep some on hand next time you need leverage. Your partner settles in beside you, smelling of smoke, pine, and deer. He nods at the fire and mutters, "Nearly gave up. But you got it going." You nod back, proud in that silent, exhausted way only Stone Age mothers have mastered. There's a silence, then a good one, full of crackling wood, rustling furs, the soft, rhythmic breathing of your children. You all sit there watching the flames, as if the fire is telling you something you don't quite understand, but really want to believe. And then the smoke shifts, just a little, just enough to make your eyes water and your nose twitch. You shift your seat. The smoke follows. You move again. It follows again. You grunt, stand, circle the fire, and sit on the other side. It follows. The smoke has chosen you. You accept your fate. A joke begins quiet low, shared between the adults. Something about the spirits preferring your side because you didn't burn sage earlier. Someone laughs so hard they spill their water. You shake your head, smiling despite yourself. A spark flies from the fire and lands on your foot. You yelp, pat it out, and now everyone's laughing, including your partner, who is absolutely no help, but it's a good laugh. A tired, belly-deep one, the kind that only comes at the end of a long, absurd day. You poke the fire with a stick and watch the embers swirl red-orange and bright against the night. One child is already snoring. Another is muttering in their sleep something about dancing badgers. You lean back, firelight flickering on your face, and think, maybe this isn't such a bad life. Hard. Yes, but not bad. You're just settling into that pleasant post-fire days when raised voices waft across the clearing. Not panicked or urgent, no one's being eaten, thankfully, but animated enough to make your ears perk up. You glance over and see two figures gesturing furiously near the berry cache. One is waving a stick like a scepter. The other is holding what appears to be a half-eaten fruit and looking deeply betrayed. Oh dear, it's happening again. Neighborhood drama, 9000 BCE edition. You shuffle over fur draped across your shoulders, face set to neutral. You're not exactly the designated mediator of the group, but as a mom with 3 children and roughly 0 patience for nonsense, you often end up playing that role by default. As you approach, you get the gist someone took more than their fair share of the good berries. Not the mushy ones. The plump, dark ones at the bottom of the basket that everyone pretends not to care about but absolutely notices when they vanish. You let them air their grievances for a bit. One insists they were saving them for a sacred offering. The other insists that saving looks an awful lot like chewing. The stick waving intensifies. You gently remove the stick just in case it escalates. Historians still argue whether these early disputes were about fairness ritual or just plain hunger. From where you stand, it's probably all three with a splash of personal vendetta. Eventually, you step between them and make the ancient gesture of peace. You offer both parties a piece of dried root. They chew resentfully. You suggest a fair share policy for the next foraging cycle. No one agrees exactly, but the yelling stops. That's a win. Behind you, someone snorts. You turn to see Mara watching the scene, arms folded, smirking. Another berry war, she says. You nod. She shrugs. Could be worse. Remember the pine nut incident? You do. You remember it well. It ended with someone moving their bedding outside for a week and a deeply awkward dance to cleanse the camp. As you walk back towards the fire, you pass a trio of teenagers arguing over the best way to dry moss for pillows. One insists the sun is best. Another claims fire smoke keeps the spirits away. The third just wants the moss to stop being damp. You smile to yourself. Every generation thinks it's invented sleeping comfort. Back at the fire, your partner raises an eyebrow. Sorted. Sorted enough, you reply. No one's crying, and the berries are being redistributed. He grunts approvingly and hands you a half-burnt root. It's terrible. You eat it anyway. Then from the other side of the clearing, a new drama begins, this time involving two very flirtatious adults and a blanket that mysteriously went missing last week. You glance over Sai and decide to stay out of it. If a romance blooms from shared theft and stolen fur that's between them and the gods, still the camp starts whispering. Gossip, you see, predates language. It's mostly conveyed through pointed grunts and meaningful side eyes. You catch one child mimicking the flirtation with exaggerated winks and giggles. Another is trying to climb the gossiping adults, like a tree entirely oblivious to the budding tension. You turn back to the fire and poke it a little harder than necessary. One of the elders begins telling a story to distract the children. It's about a time the moon fell into a lake and turned all the fish to gold. It's clearly nonsense, but the children are riveted and the adults are grateful. You listen too, letting the rhythm of the tale smooth over the day's jagged bits. It ends as many stories do, with someone climbing something they shouldn't and needing rescue from an irritable eagle. The children laugh. The adults exchange tired but fond glances. You take a moment to braid your hair fingers, working through the tangles with practiced ease. Someone compliments the shell you tied in. You tell them it's from the coast. You don't mention it. Took 3 months of trading and 2 marriages to get it. The wind picks up, brushing cool air across your cheeks. You tug your fur tighter. Someone tosses a log on the fire, and sparks leap up, chasing each other into the dark like fireflies. And then, because life is never boring, a loud yelp pierces the air. You turn sharply. A child is hopping in place, holding their hand. You rush over. Turns out they tried to pet a squirrel. The squirrel was not amenable. You inspect the scratch. Superficial. Still, it warrants fuss. You take them to the fire, dab it with hot water, and wrap it in a clean bit of hide. They sniffle. You tell them the squirrel was probably defending its honor. This cheers them up. A little. You sit them in your lap and hum softly a tune your mother used to sing. It's simple, repetitive, and just slightly off-key, like most comfort songs. They lean into you, warm and finally still. Drama fades with the light. By now, most of the camp is winding down. People tuck into their furs, rearrange stones into slightly more comfortable positions, and whisper their last gossip of the night. The berry dispute has cooled. The flirtation is now a group joke. The squirrel attack has turned heroic. And you're just glad no one set anything on fire. On purpose, anyway. You wake with a starched cheek pressed against stone, one arm, completely numb under the weight of a child who somehow turned sideways in their sleep. The fire has dwindled to a faint glow, and outside, the wind whistles through the trees like it's got bad news. It's still dark, but sleep won't return easily. Not with your back stiff, your stomach crumbling, and the distant memory of someone snoring directly into your ear. You sit up, stretch, and shuffle quietly to the tool pile. It's time for some stonework. Most people in the camp avoid tool making after dark. The shadows make it harder to see fine cracks, and there's always the risk of slicing your hand open if your flint strikes wrong. But for you, there's something comforting about it. A quiet task, something to do with your hands when your thoughts are too restless to stay inside. You settle near the fire's edge, grab a half-formed hand axe, and begin shaping. The stone is cool and heavy in your grip, its surface still bearing the marks of previous attempts, chips that flared too wide, angles that dulled too fast. You take your time, tap, turn, tap again. Sparks flicker faintly in the dim light like fireflies debating whether to commit. You hear the familiar sound of someone shuffling awake your partner, perhaps. They grunt softly and roll over. You keep working. Historians still argue whether women in the Stone Age were active toolmakers or left it to the men. But here you are, as you've always been, shaping stone with the same calm certainty you used to calm crying toddlers and wrangle reluctant goats. Your thumb presses the flint into place. You strike with a deft flick of the wrist. A sharp chip falls away. Clean edge. You smile a little. It's deeply satisfying, this work. Simple, repetitive, but rewarding. There's a rhythm to it, like a conversation with the stone. You ask politely. It agrees, or doesn't. But when it does, and a blade edge emerges smooth and gleaming. Magic. A child stirs nearby. Little feet patter softly over the ground. You glance over. It's Dev, the early riser. Hair like tangled moss eyes, half lidded with sleep, and already eating something. You don't ask what. You just pat the space beside you and hand them a dull stone to help. Dev begins tapping aimlessly, muttering a made-up chant. You nod solemnly, as if it's part of some ancient rite. Maybe it is. Someone else wakes. Trenna, probably. She always knows when you're awake. She settles beside you with a bone to polish, humming under her breath. The air is thick with the quiet sounds of dawn before the sun scraping, breathing the occasional sniffle. You hand her one of your rejects, a lopsided scraper that you've dubbed the aggressively average tool. She chuckles, sharpens it with 3 precise strokes, and hands it back good as new. You pretend not to be impressed. Meanwhile, across the clearing, 2 young men are arguing over the best stone for spear tips. One insists on river stones, smooth and rounded. The other is a quartz man, all sharp edges and brighter sparks. You shake your head. Like always, the debate misses the point. It's not just about the stone. It's about the hands shaping it, the mood, the weather, the annoying bird that won't stop singing. You test the edge of your latest hand axe. It gleams wicked and perfect. You feel a twinge of pride. It's the sort of tool that might last a season, maybe 2, if no one tries to dig with it. A small group gathers nearby trading tips, showing off their latest projects. Someone's carved a fish into the side of their scraper. Useless for hunting, but beautiful. You nod approvingly. The child beside you tries to copy it, using a twig. Their fish looks more like a potato. You tell them it's perfect. The sun is rising now, slow and golden, creeping over the treetops like it's afraid to wake anyone. The firelight fades in its glow. Your hands are dusty, scraped. Your lap is full of chips and half-finished ideas. Your partner shuffles over and flops down beside you, eyes bleary. "You're at it again," he says. You shrug, couldn't sleep. He yawns, steals your half-finished scraper, and pretends to critique it like some kind of Stone Age artisan in residence. Edges off. Wouldn't trust it on a mammoth. You snatch it back, smile, despite yourself. Lucky we're not hunting one today. He grins, and you share a moment of quiet absurdity. Then, predictably, one of the children trips over the stone pile, lands in a basket of bark, and howls like they've been personally betrayed by gravity. You set your tools aside, brush off your lap, and rise to soothe, to shush, to kiss the bruised elbow, and fish a pebble out of someone's mouth. Back to it. But in the fading coals, the neat stack of finished tools sits proudly. Ready for the day, ready for survival. And you're ready too. Mostly. Evening has its charms, the fire, the stories, the chance to sit for more than 30 seconds without someone asking why rocks aren't food. But bedtime in the Stone Age, is less of a winding down process and more of a battle campaign, complete with hostage negotiations and the occasional mild injury. You know it's time when the youngest child starts pulling tufts of fur from your sleeping mat and insisting they're for the dream spirits. You gently redirect them with a grunt that says, "Put it back or sleep outside." They comply, but only after hiding one in their cheek. You gather the children. This sounds simple. It is not. One is under the food basket playing invisible cave dweller. Another is naked, covered in ash, and claiming to be the ghost of the fire. The third is already asleep, but in someone else's blanket, and clutching a fishbone like a security doll. You wrangle them into a pile. There's kicking, there's laughter. There's a brief moment of existential dread as one child asks, "What happens if the sun never comes back?" You dodge the question with a soothing noise and a story about a magical bird who brings the sun each morning because it loves breakfast that much. You begin tucking them in. It's a complex system of bear hides, old furs, and the occasional moss pillow. The aim is warmth. The result is chaos. The children squirm, giggle, and immediately ask for water. You hand over the drinking pouch. One sips, one spills, one uses it to feed their sleep stick. You count backwards from 10 in your head, then again, then once more for good measure. Historians still argue whether Stone Age children followed strict bedtime routines or simply collapsed when tired. From your vantage point, it's clearly the latter, with a side of dramatic resistance. Someone starts singing. It's a lullaby. Old, half-remembered, hummed in a voice that's cracked from smoke and long days. You join in softly. The melody drifts across the cave, weaving through furs and tired limbs. One by one, the children begin to settle. The ashy ghost curls under your arm, sighing like a tiny winded bear. The fishbone is carefully tucked under her chin. The invisible cave dweller makes one last valiant effort to hide beneath a fur, and then gives in with a sleepy grunt. You stroke someone's hair. You're not sure whose. It doesn't matter. You murmur a few words, protection charms, half believed, half wished. Words your mother whispered to you once, when the world was equally dark and full of mysterious sounds. Sleep soft. Stay warm. Dream light. Someone farts loudly. The entire pile giggles. You ignore it. The fire pops again, a sharp crack that startles no one now. The night has settled in properly. Wind whispers at the cave's edge, rustling the furs that hang like curtains to keep the worst of the cold out. A dog or something dog-like snores nearby. You sit for a while, watching them breathe. Your partner joins you, sits beside the sleepy heap, and offers a bit of dried root. You decline, too tired to chew. You lean your head on his shoulder. He leans back. For a moment, the world is just breath and warmth and the quiet tick of embers. And then, just as you feel your own eyes slipping shut, a voice pipes up. "Mum, if the moon's a hole in the sky, where does it go during the day?" You exhale slowly through your nose. You make up something about moonbirds. They accept it mostly. Then they ask if moonbirds poop stars. You tell them yes. They laugh, sigh, and finally drift off. You adjust the furs one last time, tucking them tighter, keeping little fingers from poking out into the cold night air. You lay a moss-stuffed doll beside one child's hand. It's lopsided and missing an eye, but it's loved. You whisper another charm, this one, just for yourself. Quiet dreams. No beast tonight, no caves collapsing, no children wandering off. The pile shifts. Someone burps in their sleep. You smile. It's a strange sort of magic, this bedtime ritual. Equal parts exhaustion chaos and fierce, bone-deep love. You return to your own sleeping spot, nestling into the furs you've arranged just so. The fire is low, the night full of quiet sounds, breathing the faint scuffle of wind, the occasional nocturnal bird muttering to itself. Tomorrow, it starts again. But for now, the hardest part of your day is over. You've put tiny cave hooligans to bed, and they stayed there, sort of. You lie there for a few minutes, staring into the darkness, listening to the soft snores and the faint crackle of dying fire. But sleep doesn't come not yet. Your body is still, but your thoughts, not so much. It's that hour, the one when the cave feels too quiet, and the shadows start to flicker in ways that make your imagination do cartwheels. You reach up almost without thinking and touch the tiny stone amulet braided into your hair, a smooth pebble shaped like a teardrop. You tied it in last winter after that very intense dream about wolves wearing antlers. Ever since, it's been your charm, just in case. Beside you, Drenna hums softly in her sleep. She always dreams with her eyes half open, which is mildly unsettling. But tonight she's calm. Must be the protective knot she tied into her belt this morning, the one she said would keep away spirits and particularly rude weather. You quietly get up, careful not to disturb the fur mound of sleeping children, and shuffle over to the back of the cave where the charms are kept. It's a little nook, half altar, half junk drawer. Feathers, pebbles with holes in them, twine twisted into loops. A small wooden idol shaped vaguely like a toad. You kneel down and add a fresh pine needle bundle to the pile. Not for any specific reason. It just smells nice and helps you focus. Historians still argue whether these rituals were religious symbolic or simply comforting patterns. To you, it doesn't really matter. They help, and they pass the time when sleep won't come. You pick up the toad idol and give it a respectful nod. Then, just for fun, you whisper her request for better weather tomorrow. The last storm turned half the drying furs into soup. Someone shuffles behind you. You glance over. It's your partner. He raises an eyebrow. Talking to frogs again. You shrug. Only the wise ones. He chuckles and hands you a length of twine. For your hair. You accept it smiling. It's soft, recently braided from bark fibers. He's not a man of many words, but he shows up with twine, and that counts for a lot. You sit cross-legged by the fire and begin braiding the new strand into your hair right next to the stone. The movement is soothing. Leftover pull, right under tug. Each twist is a breath. Each loop, a small silent prayer. You whisper things to yourself, not loud enough to wake anyone, just low enough to keep the dreams friendly. Protection for the children. Strength for your bones. No wild boar in the food stash. This week, please and thank you. You feel something small and warm curl up beside you. One of the children. Not even fully awake, just wandering the boundary between dreams and firelight. They clutch your arm and murmur about a cave full of butterflies. You tell them it's a good omen and wrap your arm around their shoulders. Together you sit. Someone nearby coughs. Another lets out a tiny snore. Outside, the wind sighs through the trees like it's thinking very hard about rain. You add a few twigs to the fire and watch the sparks float upward. Then comes the nightly murmur, the shared dream exchange. It starts with Mara, as it usually does. I dreamt of a fish with antlers. she says, eyes still closed. Someone else mutters, I dreamt I turned into a tree. Were you a good tree? Someone asks. Bit dry in the roots. The laughter is soft, tired, warm. You think for a moment, then share yours. I dreamt the moon came down and told me to wash my feet. There's a pause. Then, you should probably do that anyway. You grin. You hold the child in your arms tighter, breathing in the warm, familiar scent of moss and wood smoke. You trace the charm in your braid. Once more feel the thread of twine between your fingers. These little things, they make the night easier. You think back to earlier, Trenna, flicking ash over the fire while muttering about restful spirits, one of the children tucking feathers into the moss bedding to help the dreams float. Your partner hiding a carved figure near the food stash because it keeps the mice humble. Silly maybe, but what is survival? If not making meaning where you can, you stand finally shifting the sleeping child back into their place in the fur pile, smoothing their hair and tucking the blanket around them like a shell. You return to your own spot, curling into the warm dent, your body left behind, hair still damp from braiding fingers smelling faintly of pine and ash. Your thoughts slow. Your eyes begin to close. One last whisper, just in case, keep them safe. You drift, and the cave, full of murmurs and charms and breath, watches over you all. It starts with a squawk, loud, unpleasant, unexpected. You sit bolt upright, furs tangled around your legs, heart thudding like a mammoth's march. For a moment, you wonder if you're dreaming, until the squawk comes again, this time much closer, and somehow more indignant. A child yells, "It's back." That's all you need to hear. You scramble to your feet, grab a stick that may or may not be your fire poker, and bolt toward the cave entrance. The early morning light is watery and thin, barely lighting the clearing beyond the firs. But you can see movement, fast, feathery, and absolutely furious. The saber-toothed chicken is back. All right, not literally. You know it's not saber-toothed. It's probably not even technically a chicken. But that's what everyone calls it. Big, feathered, angry. It's been stealing scraps from the fire pit for weeks now, and last time it chased Dev for a full minute before someone distracted it with a fish skeleton. And this morning, of course, it's returned during breakfast. You burst out into the clearing just in time to see the bird strut around like it owns the place. It's easily waist-high with iridescent feathers and a glare that could peel bark off a tree. One of the toddlers throws a rock. It bounces harmlessly off the bird's side. The bird pauses, turns, fixes its gaze on the child. Nope, you mutter and dash forward, stick raised. The chicken bird screams a horrible guttural sound, like a flute being stepped on, and flaps toward you. You hold your ground, wildly brandishing the stick, hoping to look bigger and slightly less edible. The children cheer. Your partner appears beside you, half-dressed, and holding a cooking pot. You nod. He flings it. The bird dodges. Trenna joins the fray with her skull rattle, chanting something about avian invaders, and waving herbs like she's summoning a poultry-specific storm. The bird hesitates, clearly reassessing. Then, with one final screech, it flaps awkwardly into the air and disappears into the trees. You stand there panting, surrounded by scattered berries, overturned baskets, and children who now think you're some kind of hero, which is flattering, but also means they're going to expect you to defeat all wildlife from now on. You survey the damage. One fire pit, mostly intact. One pot, slightly dented. Two children still trying to fight the ghost of the bird. Breakfast, somewhat trampled. You sigh and begin the cleanup. Historians still argue whether prehistoric humans domesticated fowl or merely coexisted with them in mutual distrust. Based on this morning's event, you're leaning toward tense cohabitation with occasional skirmishes. As you gather spilled roots and pick feathers out of someone's porridge, you mutter a quiet oath, never to eat bird again unless it's properly roasted and apologetic. Your partner, ever helpful, says, "Could have been worse." You raise an eyebrow. "Could have been two birds." You concede the point. The morning continues in fits and starts. Children reenact the battle with sticks and war cries. Someone ties feathers into their hair for victory. Someone else claims the bird was a spirit test, and we all failed. Trenna agrees, but adds that it was probably testing your aura, not your aim. You spend the better part of an hour patching up your berry basket and explaining to the youngest that no, you cannot keep the feather as a pet. They sulk, then try to wear it as a mustache. Later, as you're re-roasting the flattened breakfast roots, you overhear two women debating how to lure the bird back for eating this time. One suggests digging a pit. The other wants to cover someone in berries and lie very still. You pretend not to hear. You sit back down, chewing thoughtfully on a slightly smoky root. Across the clearing, one of the kids is now impersonating the bird, complete with flapping arms and dramatic yells. Another child is riding a log like a steed, shouting to war while wearing a squirrel pelt as a helmet. You shake your head and mutter, "This is why we don't have written language yet." Still, despite the chaos, there's a certain absurd joy to the whole mess. You survived another Stone Age morning, defended the tribe from a particularly irate, oversized chicken, and managed to save most of the food. Not bad, all things considered. You stretch your legs, look up at the grey morning sky, and wonder if the bird will come back. Probably. And next time, it'll bring friends. You make a note to sharpen your stick, just in case. You'd think that after the great bird skirmish of the morning, your body would give into a well-earned rest by evening. But instead, here you are, flat on your back, furs pulled up to your chin, staring at the jagged ceiling of the cave, and wondering if that crack above your head has always looked quite so ominous. Your eyes flick to the cave entrance. Darkness out there. Deep, absolute. The kind of black that swallows sound and spits out your own thoughts, echoing twice as loud. You shift. The rock beneath you shifts back. Probably not literally, but at this point, who's to say? Beside you, a child snores into your shoulder. Another has their foot firmly wedged under your ribs. You could move it, but that would risk waking them. You weigh the options and decide it's better to suffer in silence. Your thoughts start their usual midnight parade. Firewood. Do we have enough? Probably not. Could get more in the morning, unless it rains again, in which case, it'll all be wet and useless. Maybe start drying some now, but that means waking up, and you're very much not in the mood. You consider your food stores. Not bad, though that bundle of roots might have gone soft. And the squirrel pelt you laid out for scraping still smells a bit like squirrel. You make a note to deal with it tomorrow, which is a polite way of saying possibly never. A cough cuts through the cave, just one sharp and echoing. You freeze. It's Dev. He rolls over, sighs dramatically, and continues sleeping. You exhale. Not plague then, just dreams. Probably about feathers. Historians still argue whether prehistoric people suffered from insomnia or simply collapsed after sunset. Based on tonight's performance, you're firmly in the wide awake and overthinking camp. You rub your face. Your skin feels dry and smoky. Your hair is sticking to your cheek thanks to someone's sticky hand. You try to free it and get a quiet murmur in protest. You abandon the attempt. Somewhere in the cave, someone mutters in their sleep something about bones. You decide not to ask. And then, of course, your brain reminds you about the cave ghost. It's not a ghost, obviously. Probably. But last winter, someone heard whispering near the back wall. And now the story won't die. You've never heard it yourself. Still tonight, you suddenly can't stop thinking about it. Was that a whisper? Or just the wind? You pull the furs tighter. You try counting things to calm your mind. First, the tools in your pouch. Then the children's teeth. Though you realize halfway through, you've no idea how many they're supposed to have. You switch to firewood bundles again. It helps a bit until the drip starts. Drip, drip, somewhere near the entrance. Maybe from that puddle. Maybe from the gods themselves, weeping at your lack of sleep. You try to ignore it. You try to shift to your side. This causes the child to snort and roll directly on top of your arm. You give up. You stare into the dark again, letting your thoughts wander into weirder terrain. What if we could just grow food? Like put it in the ground and let it sprout, instead of hiking 10 miles for a handful of berries. Wild? Completely unthinkable. Or what if water came from the ground instead of the sky? Or if goats stayed in one place? You chuckle softly to yourself. You're clearly losing it. Your partner stirs beside you. He mutters, "You okay? Can't sleep." He grunts. "Try counting flint chips." Already did. He rolls over and goes back to sleep in the space of a single breath. You stare at him in quiet, jealous disbelief. Eventually, you give in. You rise carefully, stepping over sleeping limbs and around snoring bodies, making your way to the cave mouth. Outside, the world is hushed. The trees are still. The stars blink lazily above, muffled by a low, creeping mist. You breathe in the cold, pine-tinged air and let it fill your chest. It's peaceful out here. And lonely. You find your stone, your sitting rock, the one worn smooth by years of thinking too hard. You perch there now, wrapping the fur tight around you, and listen. Nothing. Just the soft hum of night. Eventually, your thoughts slow. The worries soften. Your eyes begin to droop. Back in the cave, the drip has stopped. Or maybe you've stopped noticing. You slip back inside, back to the sleeping pile, and nestle into your spot. This time, when a child's foot thumps against your leg, it doesn't bother you. Your last thought before sleep finally takes you. Remember to hide the fish bones from the bird. Morning creeps in slow, pale, and damp. There's no sunrise. Not really, just a gentle lightening of the cave's mouth, like the world is stretching under its mossy blanket and debating whether it's worth getting up today. You feel the same way. Your eyes open reluctantly, crusty with smoke. A child is snoring into your elbow. Another has acquired a second fur in the night, leaving you with half a corner of hide and a freezing foot. Your partner is flat on his back, mouth open, possibly dreaming of goats. You ease yourself upright. Everything aches. Your neck, your back. One knee that clicks ominously every time you move it past a certain angle. You were not built for cave flooring, but here you are, and somehow, impossibly, you made it through another day. You look around at the heap of sleeping bodies, your people. Some still drooling, some already stirring. All breathing, all safe. That's your job. That's your victory. You stumble towards the cave entrance and push aside the fur curtain. Outside it's damp but quiet. Mist curls around the trees like shy ghosts. Somewhere in the distance, a bird calls. Not the big one, thankfully, just a regular, reasonably sized bird. You exhale. It's been a day, a life, a collection of moments strung together by dried sinew and sheer grit. You think back to every odd, exhausting bit of it. Breakfast that tasted like bark. Children trying to domesticate beetles. A fashion moment made entirely out of rabbit skins. An actual fire-breathing bird or close enough. And all the tiny dramas in between berries. Tools, rituals, bad dreams, and that persistent trip. You remember each face, each grunt, each laugh. Historians talk about daily life in broad strokes, tools, fire, food, survival. But you know the truth. It's not just what you do. It's who you carry through it. And tonight, just like last night, you carried a lot. Tev's foot kicks in his sleep, narrowly missing someone's ear. You smile. They'll all be up soon demanding food and inventing new ways to fall off things. You'd better start boiling something. But not yet. For a few more minutes, you let yourself sit. The fire's out, but the coals are still warm. You poke at them idly, then toss on a few twigs. It catches slowly, sleepily. Like even the flames want one more moment of peace. Your partner sits up behind you, hair sticking out in all directions. You're up early. You grunt. I never slept. He nods, yawns, and starts looking for his other shoe. It's under a child, of course. Everything's under a child. The day begins again, same as always. You stretch your arms overhead, feel your spine crack like an old branch, and breathe deep. And still somehow, you're here. You're doing it. Being a mother. Being alive. Being the force that holds this muddy, chaotic, occasionally chicken-infested little band together. And that's something. Now the camp is still. The last embers of the fire glow softly fading with every breath of wind that drifts through the cave. The children at last are silent, tangled in their furs like little woodland creatures, tucked into nests, soft-faced in sleep, their wild energy reduced to the quiet rise and fall of peaceful chests. You sit beside them, eyes, half-closed shoulders slack at last. The ache in your limbs settles into the stone beneath you, the pull of gravity, no longer a burden, but an anchor. The cave hums with quiet, no words, no movement, just the hush of breath and the faint rustle of fur. Your fingers trace the charm in your braid, the twine now warm from your skin. You listen to the slow rhythm of the world around you. A distant owl calls once, then silence. Even the wind has stopped whispering for now. You let your thoughts soften. No more roots to dig, no fires to light, no giant birds to chase, at least for tonight. Just you, here, alive, tired, but whole. You shift your weight slowly, lying down beside your children, the warmth of their bodies curling around you like familiar blankets. Your eyes flutter shut, and in this moment, in the quiet between one day and the next, you feel it. Safety, stillness, the small persistent wonder of survival. Sleep finds you gently. It curls around your spine, wraps itself in your hair, whispers something wordless and kind. You breathe out once long and low and let go. Let the night hold you. Let the past drift. Let tomorrow wait.